Hey guys, I want to talk to you a little bit about our test that we're going to be having tomorrow. So I was going to go through kind of each type of problem that we've been dealing with, and then when we get into class, you guys can ask your questions as we continue to review for our test tomorrow. So the first type of question that you're going to be seeing is when they've already factored it for you, and you're essentially just showing me that you understand, once it's factored, how to get to your solution. Okay, so in this example, we got 3x minus 4 times x plus 2 equals 0. So this is already factored. This is like after you've done the hard work, now you're setting it up or splitting it up to set them both equal to 0. Okay, at this point, again, there's no extra factoring you're having to do. Right now, you're just setting each of our parentheses equal to 0. Okay, from here, as you go through this, we're doing our solving. So if we have two terms here, I'm trying to get rid of our constant, or the number with no variable first, by doing the opposite operation. Again, be careful of your signs. Right now it was minus, so we had to add. That was the opposite. So they would cancel out. So I have 3x equals 0 plus 4 is 4. 3 and x are next to each other, so the opposites divide. So we divide by 3, so I get x equals 4/3. So that's half of my solution. Okay. On the other side then, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Again, opposite operation to plus 2, the opposite's minus. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. So I would have my two answers, or my two solutions here, of x equals 4/3 and x equals negative 2. Okay? So again, that is one type of problem that you would see. The second problem, this is the one that's very, very much like the question number 2 on our quiz that a lot of people had questions on. So this one here, we have our 6x squared plus 10x equals 0. So for this one, as you're kind of looking at this, or as you're kind of going through this problem, our first steps are check to see if it's equal to 0. Yep, it's equal to 0. So then I would go ahead and look to see if there's a greatest common factor that we can factor out of the problem. So for this one, I have a 6 and a 10. So I'm looking for common factors. So usually I look at the smaller number and think of its factors. So 6 is my smaller number. 6 is the biggest thing that comes out of this, so I'd say, well, I can't divide 10 by 6, so that doesn't work. 3 is the next biggest number that goes into 6. Can't divide 10 by 3. So then the largest number that I can divide by 6 and by 10 is 2, because that is a factor of 6. So I can divide both of these things by 2. So I will write that 2 out front. Next thing I'm going to do is look at my x's. Some of you do this, some of you don't. Your choice. I have two x's here. X squared is just two x's times each other. Here I have 1x, so I'd say, well, what's the most amount of x I can take out? Well, if I take out 1x here, I can take 1x out of here, so 1x is the most amount of x's because the second one doesn't have any left. Okay, so here I have 2x out front. We're going to fill in our parentheses with what's left, so 6 divided by 2 gets me 3. I have 1x left over here, so I'd have 1x with that 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. It's positive because I have the plus sign there. There's no x's left because we took that 1x away. And then I have it equal to 0. Okay. Again, from this point, we're going to set each piece equal to 0. I'm doing this 2x equal to 0 because it has an x. If it was just a 2 out front, there's nothing left to do. Okay. But because this one has an x, I'm going to write 2x equals 0 and 3x plus 5 equals 0. Again, this process, similar to last time, 2x, when it's right next to each other, it's basically they're being multiplied, so the opposite of multiplication is division. So if I divide, we get x equals 0 divided by 2 is 0, so that is one of my solutions. On the right side, again, I got to get rid of my constant first. It's a plus 5, so the opposite is to subtract. I've got 3x equals negative 5. Again, when they're next to each other, they're being multiplied. The opposite is divide. So I get x equals negative 5/3. Again, noticing I have two solutions. The norm is to get two solutions here. Okay? Then our third one. Again, I'm going to go through kind of one of each type of set that you could see. So our third one would be what we called our perfect squares. So I've got 81 x squared minus 196 equals 0. Okay? So this is a problem that we talked about. There's two different ways you could do this. You could treat it like our magic method, where you would go ahead and put a 0x in the middle, or you could kind of split this up as your perfect squares. completely up to you. The majority of the class talked about doing our magic method, so I'm going to again show the magic method. Magic method is I would put 0x in the middle. Again, the other method is a little bit quicker, but since this is what you're used to doing, this might be one that you would choose to do. I would multiply my first and last term. Again, the reason why the other one's a little quicker is this is going to get you a really big number. So if I do 81 times 196, that's not what I did. 81 times 196, it gets us 15,876. So 15,876, if I go through and list all the factors, there's going to be a lot. The pair that works out to get me that 0 is, and this should be a negative, because I did 81 times negative 196, would be 126 and negative 126. Okay. Again, the goal here is to get this to multiply to get me this negative 15,876 and to add to the 0 in the middle. So 126 and negative 126 add to the 0 in the middle and multiply to get me my negative 15,876. Then I would put in my two parentheses. I have 81x plus 126. Then I've got my 81x minus 126 equals 0. Again, I'll split this up once I get to the factored form. So I have 81x plus 126 equals 0. 81x minus 126 equals 0. Same exact steps again to solve, just like we've been doing. I'm going to do the opposite operation here. So I'd subtract 126, subtract 126. Negative 126 divided by 81 gets you 1 5/9, or if I actually change that to a fraction or a decimal here, it gets you x equals negative 1.5 repeating. Over here, same thing, add the 126. Divide by 81. So you get x equals 1.5 repeating. Again, you could leave this as a decimal or you can leave it as a fraction. Either way is totally fine, but that would be kind of my end result there. Okay. So again, perfect square, you could have done it this way. The other method was where we could split this up. Basically, you have 81, the perfect square. I think you can see that. Yep. Perfect square there is 9 of 81, so I'd have 9x in the first parentheses. The square root of 196 is 14, plus and a minus, and then you can set those two equal to 0. They'll simplify out to the exact same answer, but that would be kind of the second method or the other method that we talked about. Okay. Again, just going through one of each type that you could see. These are exactly the same as the very first quiz that we would have taken that we use as practice. This is those types of questions. Again, looking just like what your test is going to look like. Okay. So then here we've got x squared plus x equals 20. Like we said earlier, our normal kind of method is to first get it equal to 0. So right now it's not equal to 0, so I'm going to have to move something over. I'm going to move this 20. It's a positive 20. Some of you like to put that line in the middle to remind you as you're moving it across should be the opposite. So I'm going to subtract 20 here, subtract 20 here. Get our 0 on the right side. That's the purpose of that. On the left side, remember you can only combine like terms. So I have an x squared here. This doesn't have an x squared, so x squared is going to stay the same. Here I have an x. Here I have a negative 20. It doesn't have an x, so they're not the same, so I'd leave it as plus x. I'm going to add a 1 in there just to remind us that there is one x there. The minus 20 then would just be written at the end. It's in standard form because it goes x squared, then x, then no x. Okay? So it's in our standard form. I can't factor anything out. The 20 doesn't have an x. Both of these are 1s, so there's nothing else I can divide out. So now I'm going to go through my magic method. Multiply your a times your c. 1 times negative 20 is negative 20. So we'll list our factors of negative 20 and see if we can get them to add to positive 1. So I've got 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. It's a negative 20, so I got to make one of these negative. So I'm going to go through and make one side negative. If I add them, this gets me 19. Nope. Gets me 8. Nope. Gets me positive 1. So I know this is my pair. Okay. My first term is going to come down, so I have x minus 4, x plus 5. Again, I could bring this 1 down if you wanted to. It's not going to change my problem, but I could bring that down. If you have a whole number here, you will bring it down with, like in the front of both of our parentheses. Okay. Now I'm going to split this up. So I have x minus 4 equals 0, x plus 5 equals 0. Both of these are just one step. 0 plus 4 is 4, so I have x equals 4. Here I subtract 5, so I have x equals negative 5, and there's my two solutions. Okay. Last type of problem is if we do have an a value out front, so if we do have a number with our x squared. So if I have a problem like 15 x squared equals 2 plus x, I have a problem like this. Okay. A little bit different looking. Again, our goal is to get 0 on one side first, see if there's any common factors we can take out, make sure it's in standard form. So here I have my 15x squared. The x squared is positive, so we want to leave that positive. So I'm going to move everything over to the left, so we have our 0 over here on the right side. When I start moving things, just remember it needs to be in standard form. So I have 15x squared on the left side. If we just get rid of them in order, I'd have minus 2. This would cancel out, so I have equals x is still left on the right side. So I'd have 15x squared minus 2. Again, the 2 and the 15 aren't combined because this has an x squared. This does not have an x, so they're not alike. I move my x over here. It is a 1x, so I would subtract 1x to the other side to get my 0. When I do that, again, this needs to be in standard form, so my 15x squared stays the same because this is just an x, this is an x squared. I would then put this minus 1x in the middle because our standard form says x squared, then x, then something that doesn't have our x. So that's why my negative 2 is going to be at the end. Okay. So again, make sure you're in standard form, x squared, x, no x's for our problem before we move on. Okay. I'll look through and see is there anything I can take out. Right now, there's nothing I can take out for my numbers, 15, 1, and 2. They don't have a common factor. X, x, this one doesn't have an x, so I can't take any x's out. So now I'm going to do my magic method, multiply my a times my c, so 15 times negative 2 is negative 30. List our factors and see if we can get to that negative 1. So I got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 5 and 6. It's a negative 30, so I need to get myself to a negative value that's going to multiply, so I can make one of these lines negative. So let's just say I did this first one. If I go through, I'd get 29, doesn't work. 13, not even close. 7, doesn't work. This one, if I did it, I would get a positive 1, negative 5 plus 6. So because it's going to give me a positive 1, I need to change the sign because I need a negative 1 here. So here I would have 15x plus 5, 15x minus 6 equals 0. Again, the 15 is coming from my front term, my positive 5, my negative 6. Then, just like we've been doing, we put them equal to 0 separately. Subtract our 5. 15x equals negative 5. Divide by 15. If you simplify this, you would get negative 1/3. Because you can divide both by 5. Here I'd add the 6. So I have 15x equals 6. Divide by 15. So here I'd have divide both of these by 3. So I'd have 2 over 5. And I would have my two solutions. Again, getting those two solutions. Okay. If you're a person who's got any questions or you're stuck on anything, again, you can always come back to this video throughout today's practice, getting ready for tomorrow's test. But again, this is kind of your resource. Every problem that you're possibly going to see on the test is kind of represented here. Okay. Again, let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you guys soon.